Cache-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome back to episode 201 of the GeoGearHeads, another exciting episode, I'm sure. And I'm back with the Bad Cop as usual, and I'm, of course, Daryl W4 with our special guest. So who is that tonight, Chris?
Well, I know exactly who it is. We are thrilled to have Chilihead, the developer of Intercaching, to talk with us tonight again, because he's been on before, about that web-based service. We had him on last on GeoGearHeads 75. Daryl, 75. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's that long ago now.
No. And that's when he gave us the first look at intercaching, and there's been a whole bunch of new stuff, including the GeoMob service. So, thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight, Tim.
Sure.
Now, I'm anxious to hear more about intercaching, but especially the GeoMob, since I have a geocache out here that I adopted specifically to convert to a mob cache. But before we get into that, we asked a question last week, and I'm sure everyone who entered is waiting to find out who was drawn as the winner. So, Tim, do you have that information?
I do. That winner from coinsandpins.com is DSMS99.
So congrats, DSMS99. Boy, I'm having issues with that. He already got back with us, and he's going to be getting one of those coin sets from coinsandpins.com. So congrats. I'll hopefully get that on the mail tomorrow or maybe even Saturday. But, Tim, we really want to hear more about this GeoMob service, because that seems to be really hot. Not that there's a lot of them out there, but it's like the talk of the town.
Yes, that's something I developed maybe a year and a half ago or so. When the lab caches were first coming out, I thought it might be a good concept for that. I always make fun of flash mobs because they're kind of, to me, kind of a joke of the world. I'm not big in them. But I do like getting people together. So for one of our events, I think it was last summer, I made this application so you get, I don't know what I had, maybe eight people together within a certain radius of a certain coordinates. Once you have that on smartphones, of course, then a message is revealed. The message is usually the coordinates to the cache, but it could be anything you want to give out. So that actually worked out pretty well. I announced that to the other people on my intercaching Facebook group, and there's probably 60 or 70 of those out there now, or there might be more, I'm not sure. I know about 60 or 70, but there might be 89, who knows. It's pretty much just a little hack. It's something fun because you got to get people together. There are ways of cheating it if you're tech savvy, but I really haven't seen people do that. And that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of functionality in there, but you can. Some people have tied it into an intercache itself. So they're separate sites right now. I have not integrated in the mob functionality into the intercache proper yet.
Do you see that happening in the future?
Depends on time.
Good point.
Yeah, it's that darn work, that full-time job that gets in the way of doing what I really want to do.
I feel you, brother.
And kids, of course. Yeah, I've been last year spending a lot of time with get my daughter out to school, and I do consulting on the side, so I haven't.
Oh, Tim, we're having some issues with your audio and video there, so maybe try muting your video and let's see if we can get you back full time. But you were saying that you do consulting on the side after you get the daughter off to school.
Yeah, I was just saying that takes up most of my time. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. So that's kind of taking my time away from doing the side projects. I've got a few side, for the geocaching things. I've got a few things I'd like to do, or a lot of things I'd like to do with the intercaching and with the mob. But time, as always. I mean, I've got a big long list. I got a lot of people that have asked for enhancements, mostly to the intercaching, but some to the mob. But yeah, I'm more than willing to hear any kind of improvements or updates, enhancements that people want to look at for the mob cache.
And of
Nice.
course, those will be prioritized by the amount of the donation that comes along with it.
I haven't gotten any donations yet. Oh, you still there? Okay. Haven't gotten any donations. It'd be nice.
Well, we might
That's
be
not
able
what
to
I work
fix
for.
that there. Have you come across any problems with reviewers rejecting a mob cache that you were aware of?
I am a reviewer.
Okay.
So all the ones in my area, I pretty much can publish pretty easily because I know the details, and I have cleared this with Groundspeak, a while ago to make sure the concept was okay. They do get discussed in our forums sometimes, so that's when I jump in and hopefully help them get published. But yeah, I think some people are just concerned about whether or not they meet the guidelines, because you need to get multiple people together. And like I said, there are ways, if you really want to do it yourself and you're tech savvy, you can do it. And that's kind of one of the caveats I think I left, or one of the holes I left in place. If you're a antisocial type person and don't want to talk to anybody, hey, go for it. You can go do it yourself.
Nice. Nice. Now, you also mentioned, okay, so we've talked about the GeoMob or the mob cache. Tell us what is happening with intercaching itself.
So the updates I've made since the last time we talked, I've made it more like an adventure game. So you can add items or characters. You can really call them anything you want. You can add constraints. So previously, the first version, when we last talked, it was a sequential thing. You go from point A to B to C to D, as many points as you want, and you answer questions in order to move forward. Now I can put constraints on every location to say this location is only visible if you've been to another location or if you've picked up this virtual item in the game. So the first one I have, it's a Wizard of Oz theme. So you have to go talk to, I forgot what it is. You got to talk to
Scarecrow first?
Well, there's a few characters you have to talk to before the tornado comes and pick up Toto.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you do that, then you're transported to Oz, and then until you play the part of Dorothy, and you have to go find the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion. And once you've done that, then you can the location to the witch's castle opens up. So you have to go find a bucket of water, and then you can throw the water on the witch. So it takes about 45 minutes or so to play because you do have to visit about 20 locations or so. The nice thing about this compared to a multi-cache is maintenance is real easy because I don't have 20 things out in the field. I just have the final cache. So it's a nice way of making kind of a longer cache without having to replace tags or boxes or whatever all the time. But that one has worked out pretty well. That's the only one I've actually made that has constraints. There is somebody else that's put out a U.S. state-based one, so there's 50 locations, one for each state, and I think you have to visit all 50 locations. I'm not sure how it works. I haven't actually looked at it, but people have done some pretty cool things. I haven't played many of them just because I've played mine, of course. There's one other one in my area, and there's one in Buffalo, an hour or so from here. I'd like to find some other ones to see what people have done.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually found an intercache to be played with yet, but that's something I'd like to do. And of course, I tried playing with it, made a test one myself, but haven't found a location in a story that really speaks to me to create one to actually publish yet.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the challenge sometimes is coming up with something cool. I've got a historical tour of the town, which is kind of neat. But I haven't come up with anything really cool and creative. But I'm not really a creative kind of guy. But yeah, the next thing I've got changes, and actually I've been sitting on these changes for almost a year now, are additional constraints, time-based constraints. So you can make locations only appear between certain hours. And since it's all on the server side, you can't really hack that. So that would be kind of a cool way of making a night cache instead of putting fire tax or other things. Or restricting caches, in cemeteries to daylight hours.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the questions that kind of goes along with that would be whether there's a sunrise, sunset parameter that you might be able to even set. Because, like, Where I Go has the time constraint, but we have caches up here that lock it at, like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and in the winter, it's already been dark for like 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it would be relatively easy to do, I think, is based on location. I'm sure there's a web service out there I could call into to say what is the sunrise, sunset time for these coordinates. So that would be something probably I could do. Otherwise, you'd have to have the cache owner go in and edit every few months to update the times,
Right,
which
right.
might be kind of a pain. But
It would, but at least that way you could do it so that, you're not 4 hours after dark one time and an hour before dark the next kind of thing.
yeah.
Well, one of our
But
listeners actually had tweeted, and this is from KC9GBO, that he just submitted 7 caches for his GIF event this Saturday. 3 of them are puzzles, 1 intercache, and 3 traditionals. It's the second intercache he's done, and he says to start simple and then get used to the system. I had trouble with constraints and viewable locations. For some reason, I had to use decimal degrees and couldn't update my start position. Also, I'm not sure what I can do with the items yet.
So a lot of people complain about the coordinates. Everything is decimal degrees just because it's easier to work with. That is something, again, another item on my list is to let you choose your coordinate formats. I'm not sure what he's talking about with the problem with the start location. There is a location called start. You can make the coordinates anything you want, but he should be able to edit the name and edit the description. The start is a little funky, I guess, as you can't move another location to be your start location. As you make your start, and that's kind of almost a splash screen for your intercache. Everything after that is editable, and you can join them together. I do want to fix that because it's a little bit kludgy with the start. So I think there might be just some confusion with that one. What was the other thing? Items, he said, or items constraints. Yeah. So items, there's not a lot you can do. Basically, the concept is you can put a key out there at a location. So you go to coordinates and you'll see a blue key. So you can pick up the blue key, and once you have that blue key, then you can make another location like a blue door available, visible from some other location. So you can put some description saying you pick up the blue key and now you can go to this other location, and you can, or not tell them, you can let them discover it themselves. You can't actually do anything with the items. Just having them makes locations appear. So it's not like you can, in the old style adventure games, say pick up key and put key in lock. Basically, you have it so other things present themselves. The idea was to keep it real simple. I mean, there's no programming involved. It's basically just connecting locations together and making constraints on locations based on where you've been and what you have. So it's not nearly as powerful as a Where I Go. It's a lot easier, at least I think it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Where I Go, you have to have a little bit of programming knowledge to be able to do much of anything with.
Yeah, well, yeah, Ranger Fox has been working on the Where I Go Foundation. It's a web-based service for building these things, and it is a little bit more point and click. I have not really played with it too much, but it does look a lot easier for a non-software type person to create one of these things. So it's, you click on a map, you say create location, and I don't know how you connect things together. It is easier though, as you can. I assume you can write some code like in a Where I Go, but I have not played with it.
Well, I haven't played with that one in probably a year. It was real early when I last played with it, but it's become real popular out here. Among other things, it allows for the Play Anywhere cartridges, and a lot of people are doing just like the quizzes with that one. So you can solve the puzzle. It's usually like a right-wrong kind of thing, and as long as you get all the way through most of the questions, and it gives you the final coordinates. So there's a lot of Where I Go's being published based on that, and a few other ones. But we just had a little Halloween event out here I want to say it was 14 total caches. Of that, 2 of them were where I goes, and there were at least 2 more. I think it was actually 4 letterboxes in there. So it was kind of cool to see that many non-traditional caches out there.
Nice.
Yeah, I have seen people put together some intercaches similar to that, where you have locations that have no coordinates. You can define I won't call it play anywhere, but I mean, you can define a location that has no coordinates, but it has a question and answer. So you can build a quiz, although there's better ways of doing that online than using either a where I go or an intercache, but you can if you want to tie it in together with something else.
Yeah, well, and for a lot of them, they were looking for that where I go icon.
Yes. Either the own or find, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, busy day challenges, whenever challenges come back, but
if challenges come back.
Hopefully not. As a reviewer, I don't like them, but as a player, I like some.
Well, we have more questions. This one comes from DeBear. He sent this on Google+. He says, I checked out intercaching. When I tried it, cell phone reception proved to be too poor in the area I wanted to place my cache. Not an uncommon phenomenon where I live. Lots of mountains means lots of dead zones. Is there an offline mode that people can leverage?
There is not. There is something I've talked about doing that. That's a bigger change. The whole concept of the intercache is to play on your phone without having any other apps downloaded. It just uses your HTML5 compliant browser, so it can work in Firefox or Chrome or Safari. I assume it might work in Windows, but nobody has Windows phones for the most part, so I don't really know. But yeah, so because it's browser-based, it's a little bit harder to make it offline. Now, there are things they can do to take the current pages that people develop, wrap them up in something called what's it called, Phone Gap, and you can make native apps. So I can make a native app version of Intercache and do that. I'd need to then add a lot more security into it, because right now I don't. All the security is because it's all in the server. So as far as cheating out questions and answers, you can't really do it. But if I put it in a native app, it'd be a little bit easier to cheat, unless I added encryption and all that kind of stuff, which I haven't done. But yeah, that would be a nice thing to have as an offline mode. But that's not towards the top of the list of things I want to do.
Yeah, so if you're doing something like the Phone Gap, though, would that mean it would be a different app for each one of the cartridges, essentially?
Probably not. I mean, I would make a Phone Gap version because I don't want to have to develop for iPhone and Android. So I'd make a Phone Gap version of basically the skeleton pages I have, and I would allow you to download a bunch of HTML5 and JavaScript files to be played offline. I mean, it probably wouldn't be a whole lot of work, but there is some server-side work I need to put onto the client.
Well, let's move on to Brylang's comment on Google+. I tried one in October of 2014, at least I think it was intercaching, on an old iPhone 4S. I had to switch to a different screen for a minute, and when I went back, I lost all my progress. Hopefully the caching/session storage features have been improved.
I have not seen that myself. I know I have seen other people like Brilling, whatever his name is here, report, and I'm not sure if it's a browser issue or an OS issue. For the most part, it does work. Possibly if there's a setting in the browser to clear out a session when you exit and come back in. But that is actually towards the top of my list of things to fix, because I do the way I cache the state could be a lot cleaner. It's on the session on the server, so if you start a new session, you basically have to start over. That said, there are things that intercache owners can do to make checkpoints. So as you play along, you can give a code so that when you enter the code, you can start in the middle of the game or towards the end of the game. So there are things like if I'm making a longer intercache, I would say make 4 or 5 checkpoints along so that next time you start, you have to enter the code XYZ into a box to take you right to the middle of the game. But that's the cache owner to build that in. But that can be done. But yeah, that is one of the things I want to fix.
Nice. Well, we have a lot of feedback for this show, so we're going to keep going. This one comes from Limax via email. I want to add a bit more for your show in intercaching. I found out about it a year ago when one of our local cachers, Basso Cantor, put out an Intercache in the latest addition to his Machine series, which was a series of gadget caches relying on electronics. This one was called Rescue Horace Smith. It was GC, or it still is, GC4Z4Y3. I may have made a cameo in the cache as well, but I really won't say. Okay, the one problem I have with Intercaches is that it never worked well when the Wi-Fi was turned on my iPhone. I had trouble finding where I was located. I had it both Wi-Fi and cellular turned on at the same time. Once I turned off Wi-Fi, I was able to get better locks on the zones and in the Intercache. Is that still an issue where you have to have just cellular in order to do Intercaches?
So that seems like a platform-specific problem. I'd be interested in hearing what would happen just opening up Google Maps in the browser, not the application, but because, again, it's all browser-based, I'm getting the location information from the browser. So the browser is telling me that you're at, XY latitude, longitude. That's all I have to work with. So if the OS and the browser are not playing nicely, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. I might suggest, I don't know if they said in the notes I have, I don't know if he said if he used Android or iOS, so it might be different on one. The one thing I could say is, try Chrome if you're using Firefox or using Safari. Try another browser. That's not a great answer, but I'm kind of limited because I'm not in native code here. I'm just getting what the browser is telling me with your location.
Well, my first response when I saw this was most likely it was a bad access point location near him, because all of these phones now use some database where they map the MAC address of the available access points. And I've had that screw me up a number of times, where in one case I jumped to, I think it was like Iowa, when I hit a,
yes.
and I'm in Detroit, so it's quite a jump. When it found a Comcast access point, and that was the only thing around, and that access point obviously had been registered in like Iowa, not Michigan. And, I've had similar problems, and one of the worst things, and I mentioned this a long time ago, was when I used my MiFi. It had mapped the MiFi to a location in one of the parking lots. I can't remember which area, which city, but every time I turned on that MiFi, all of the location or all of the devices I have that had the Wi-Fi enabled would give me weird readings, either jumping there or trying to average and go somewhere halfway in between or whatever. So, yeah, the Wi-Fi can be an issue because of that information.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of surprising. I know it does that, but I thought it would take the GPS coordinates as a priority over the SSID location and whatever Google has for a database. I know it will triangulate quicker with Wi-Fi on because it can use that information to get your approximate location pretty quick. But I thought that it would zero in on the GPS coordinates that the phone has, after that. But yeah, it still may be averaging or doing something with that. I mean, I think I've been in Iowa too, and I've never visited the state. Yeah, so I have seen some oddities like that, not with intercaching, but just with my phone, like opening up Google Maps.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not specific to any app. It's a OS level thing, because that location is happening within the OS usually.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I do have information about the accuracy that the OS has reported to me, so I do print that out. Like when you're saving locations, you're navigating, I say your accuracy is 12 feet or whatever it tells you that. So I'd be surprised if he was having problems. I guess I'd be surprised it would report a good location and good accuracy if it wasn't. But I guess you're at the mercy of whatever's in Google's database or whoever for the SSID location. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my internet connection at work reports that I'm in Kansas, so that's never fun. And I've done the same thing, Daryl. I have a hotspot using in my case it's using it's Clearwire. What is that using?
WiMAX.
WiMAX, thank you.
Okay.
And it reports me at least in the state, but in a different city. It's where their corporate headquarters are located. So.
Nice. Yeah, and the solution for those mobile hotspots is simply change the name of the SID to include _nomap at the end. And when you do that, it excludes those from the location databases.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I had no idea. I'm making notes.
Excellent. Yeah, we talked about that quite a long time ago because I had to do that when I got my next one as well because I had forgotten what that was. So if you go back through our show notes, there is actually a link to an article on that, how to do that, and what the standard is. So if you're interested, it's in one of, I think, the randomized shows, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Okay.
Meanwhile,
I
let's
must
move
not
on.
have been there because that's news to me.
I think you were, but I don't know. And it was so long ago because I want to say that was in our first year of shows.
I wasn't. I didn't wake up until the second year.
Oh, there you go. Well, they were the beta shows, so they didn't count, and all that got purged.
There you go. Yeah, that's what happened.
Unfortunately, it's still on the website, so you can check out all of that information. There's some great information back in those early shows, and a lot of stuff has changed, and a lot of stuff has not. But let's move on to feedback from Mavaju. And this comes to us in Google Plus again. This stuff is great. Hopefully it will survive better than Where I Go. Is the specification for the data open, as in defined somewhere, and people are able to implement it in their own apps? And are there data files available for offline use? So this kind of goes back to that old one about offline use. But I think we kind of already talked to this as far as being able to download them.
Yeah, so you can't download it. I have looked into adding a capability of uploading. So if you want to make your own specification in Excel, or basically upload a CSV file, it might be easier than doing it on my website, especially if you have a lot of HTML that you want to cut and paste. You could put it in an XML file or a CSV file. I'm not sure what I would have. I don't have anything. I don't have any concrete plans for doing that. I have looked into having a download for backup purposes, just because I can't guarantee my site. It's a cheap site that I have. In case something got broken, I would like people to have ability of downloading and re-uploading their files or editing offline. But there is nothing in place for that now.
And certainly nothing for playing because, again, you were talking you have no security on the stuff. So if someone were to download it, they'd just get all the information anyway.
Well, I would only allow, at this point, I would only allow downloading for the cache owner.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not even an option until a lot more work happens for anyone but the CO.
Sure.
But I have to say, I do like the option of downloading and then tweaking, because I could see going out, making the whole intercache config with the locations and everything, then coming back to the computer and sitting down and just tweaking it and doing all of that code nice and clean on a text editor or something.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
So how much do we have to make the donation to get that in progress?
Enough
for me. It's all about the time. I've got no consulting projects that I'm working on right now, so I actually do have more time. So I'd like to get a new version out before Christmas if I can.
Well, I noticed
a handful of new things.
Yeah, I noticed that you did have a update not too long ago.
Well, it's probably been a year since I made an update to intercaching.
Oh, okay. I did go.
I've got a lot of.
I was going to say I did go and double check in my Windows phone over here, and it does pass the check, so it should work with intercaching on just IE on that silly little Windows phone.
And you have an older Windows phone, Daryl, so that bodes well for even the newest ones.
No, it's only about a year old.
Oh, okay.
It's just a cheap one. It's one of those blue phones that you get unlocked off contract for under $50.
Mm-hmm.
Wet Coaster in the live Q&A asked, I've only done one intercache, but it was a great experience, and that's GC4Z1VA in Victoria, British Columbia. So I guess that's not a question, more of a statement.
Yeah, I mean, they are all over the world. I mean, most of them are in the U.S., but there's actually a good number in Germany, I think. A few in Canada. So I want to actually make a map so you can look at all the intercaches if you want to find one near you. Right now, you just have to know about it. There's not a good way of searching unless you do a keyword search of intercaching, but that's only or intercache, but that's only if somebody puts that in their cache title. So there isn't a good way right now of going to the site and saying, what are the intercaches near me? Or what are the mobs near me, for that matter?
Yeah, having some kind of even list sorted by location would be really cool. Because like I just went to the Windows Phone and wanted to test one and didn't see anything that I recognized. So just picked one at random and it ended up being in the wrong language.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not sorted by location or anything else either. So yeah, you just got to get lucky.
Well, Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about with the mob caches since you're going to actually hopefully try converting one?
The biggest question I have with the mob caches is what is a good size? There aren't any mob caches around me, so I don't have anything to compare. I was thinking, well, you could do, a smaller mob of 3, which would be easy for people to get, or a bigger mob of 8. And I really think it comes down to how often do you want your cache to be found.
So the first one I put out for our annual summer picnic, and I had it for 8. Mm-hmm. That was not a problem because we had 30, 40, 50 people there. And it didn't get found again for about 10 months.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find 8 people to go out together that all have smartphones. We have a lot of people most people have smartphones, it seems, these days anyway. But yeah, a few people went out with 5 people and couldn't get it to work because they only had 5 people and not 8. Right. So I did go back and change it down to 4, I think, after a couple of months, or after that one visit, I think. So you can do that. You can put it out for a high number because you will get that first group of first-to-finders that want to find it. So they will organize a group. I bet maybe after the first finders, you bump it down from an 8 to a 4.
Well, I have heard of people going out with like their tablet and their phone to do those, so that they get 2 instead of just 1, and that's certainly a way to kind of hack it somewhat legitimately.
Sure, and that's something I probably can't do a whole lot about, unless I add login and additional security, and that then violates geocaching listings. I can't make people create accounts and ties to email addresses and things like that. Most people want to have fun with it anyway, so they will go out. And if they want to cheat it or get around, fine. It doesn't bother me.
That takes more work on their part and planning, so let them go. Now, Tim, as a reviewer, do you feel that a mod cache or an intercache should be a 5 difficulty since it requires a special piece of equipment, a cell phone with a data connection?
I don't, but I'm a bad person to ask because people yell at me from my paddle caches that they aren't terrain 5, because I don't believe a paddle cache should be a terrain 5 just because you need a boat. I like to think of terrain as a sweat factor. If I have to paddle 10 miles, okay, I'll make it a 5. If you have to paddle 100 feet, I'm not going to make it a 5 because I figure you can swim. Same with this, is everyone has smartphones, or somebody that has a smartphone. So I don't consider that special equipment. That's kind of some people might think that. Most people think that for a boat, certainly. I'm kind of, I think, on the outs with that. But for a smartphone, I mean, most new caches that they use smartphones, or they only have a handheld GPS. I mean, I go to events now, and all the new people, no one even has a dedicated GPS. So.
Yeah, it's getting harder to find.
Let's move back to intercaching with Wet Coaster's comment, and he said it was a surprise to them that because they were just on a quick holiday, being able to search for more would be a great idea. And I think he's kind of suggesting that that search by distance thing would be nice. And I could definitely see going and trying that. When I'm looking for half an hour to an hour to kill somewhere, maybe just pull up intercaching and say, okay, what's the nearest intercache? Because I want to do a cool type of cache.
Yeah, and that's actually towards it. That's something easy I could do. That's towards the top. I actually do have a map that I can bring up. I haven't exposed that yet through the website because there's a few oddities about it. But I can bring up a map now of all the locations. One of the problems I have is because of the way the intercache is set up, there is no real start location. You could have 5 different start locations. I don't know which one to pick to be the real start. So I need to add some real functionality in place to say, all right, what is the one you want to be shown on the map? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to give away a location that the cache owner doesn't want to give away. Because if I had you had to answer a question, I don't want to pick a location at random. But yeah, there is a map I have in place. I just have to put a few tweaks into it.
Well, if you were going to go and create an intercache cache, what would you need to do to set up the cache page for that?
All the cache page has to have is a link to the game. So when you're in the editor on intercaching.com, there is a link it tells you to put in your cache page. So it's usually intercaching.com/play. I think it's .php question mark and ID equals 1 2 3 4 5. One of the other changes I have too, I haven't promoted out yet, is a way of putting a name in. So if I've got an intercache called Frolic and Fairport. I'd like to be able to go to intercaching.com/Frolic and Fairport, so you don't have to have this weird URL to enter in. Usually it's a link on the cache page, so you don't have to worry about typing it in. But when you're on the editor, you will get the link. You cut and paste that link into your cache page somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. And that's all you need to have.
But you'd have to have that listed as a unknown cache type, correct?
Actually, that's how I started. And after talking to lackeys, they believe it fits more into the multicache category.
Okay.
That's what most of them are listed as. I probably would not push back if someone wanted to make it a unknown cache type.
And same with the mobs, since it's taking you to another location?
The mobs, I don't know if there's official guidance on that. That I expect would be more of an unknown, because it's not really set up like an offset cache. Like intercaches are mostly offsets, right? You go to a location, you get there, maybe you answer a question, and you move on to the next one. A mob is usually set up as you go here with X people. When you get enough people within the radius, you get a message, which again is usually the coordinates. So I think most of those are set up as unknown. And just so people know, is I have provided a page for reviewers to use to look at the intercache. So if they want to look at all the locations to make sure you're not going onto a military base or whatever is off limits, they can see that information.
Excellent. And then is there any text that you'd recommend people put in about this as requiring a smartphone or something like that?
Most people put that anyway. If you go to the intercache page on your desktop, it's not going to work, so they will probably realize it pretty quickly.
Okay, but it's not necessarily.
I don't have a sorry.
It's not necessarily required to get published then.
It is not. I see a lot of them. People copy paste from other intercaches. So when I look, there's a lot of text that's duplicated across them. So I think people are looking at one, saying, "Okay, I like the way the text is written out," and they copy paste it into their own. And it usually does say, "Yeah, you need a smartphone, you need data connection, that sort of thing." But there is nothing required.
So is there anything that you'd recommend for someone who really wants to try placing an intercache to get started in building their adventure?
I'd make it simple. I would not use the constraints. The easiest thing to do is you go to intercaching.com, create an account, and there's a button to say create an intercache. Basically, is you walk to the location 1, you press a button saying save these coordinates, you walk to location 2, you say save these coordinates, walk to location 3, same thing, and that's all you need to do. If you do that in that order, everything will be set up, and then you go back to your computer to enter in whatever text you want. You can do that in your phone if you want. I don't like typing a lot on my phone. I usually do back on the computer. But that's pretty much it. I would not do any kind of constraints on locations. I wouldn't do any items. Once you're comfortable with having a 3 or 4 parter intercache, you can change it if you want. You can change it, add constraints, or you can make a new one. But literally, it takes 10 minutes to create a 4 or 5 part intercache.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I have noticed is accuracy isn't always that good. I don't know if it's a factor of my phone or other people's phones. I usually make the radius pretty big, especially if I'm taking people to a sign. Like I've got the one in Fairport, my town here, takes you to about 15 or 16 historical markers, and you got to go there and get information off the sign. When I first put it out, I realized, okay, people's coordinates are taking them 20 feet from the sign, and my radius was set to 12 or something like that. So they go to the sign, they hit enter in a year, but then it would say you're too far from the location. So I made all of my radiuses about 40 feet or so. That can be tweaked again based on personal experience or based on feedback from users. Yeah, of course, if you enter the year in on the sign that says you're too far, well, you could walk away from the sign to be where your GPS takes you. That's not a real satisfying experience. So,
right.
But I figure if they're at the sign, I don't care if they're 12 feet away or 40 feet.
Exactly.
And again, that might just be my phone. I don't know.
No, I found with my mob cache that I actually had to set the radius to about 100 feet to get, the result I was looking for. So.
Okay, that's a lot bigger than I would expect then.
What is the largest radius that you could enter for something like the mob cache?
You enter it meters, so you can pretty much enter. Sorry, everything's in meters again. I'm trying to make it easy for me on the software side. So Europeans like that, us Americans who are still stuck with feet and yards. Hopefully people know what a meter is, but yeah, you can enter in
6 billion meters. I couldn't figure out what it was.
What's that?
I set mine to like 6 billion meters because I can't figure out what a meter is.
Hopefully not. 6 billion. Yeah, you can enter in any number you want. I mean, if you could enter in 10,000 meters if you want, which basically means is you could set up a mob cache for your entire county. And actually, that's kind of an interesting idea.
Well, that's exactly where I was going with that. Is I could see for like some of the periscopers to try, the live streamer guys to set up a mob cache that wasn't necessarily a cache. It's just some kind of Easter egg where they just go on and say, okay, when I've got 20 people who visit this all at the same time, then it gives them the secret code word or something like that, for anywhere in, this area or something like that.
So I might do something like that. Is now you don't need to get people together, but you need to get them to coordinate.
Right, exactly. So just unlock a secret location with 20 of your friends kind of deals.
Yeah. So I did have, it's off topic a bit, but I did have somebody contact me a few weeks ago that was interested in getting a hold of the code for the mob cache. He said he didn't want to use it for geocaching. He wasn't a geocacher, but he found another purpose for it. Well, then I looked at his email address, and it was, I won't go into details too much, but it's basically his email address was a site where people go to find other people that want to watch people have sex in the park anonymously. So he wanted to use this to have published locations of whatever you want to call it.
Rendezvous.
Yeah, that's a good word. So I kind of declined that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like something that you'd want to be associated with at all.
Thanks for
no. Well, I would be for the right amount of money, but yeah, but not for free.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today and giving us a little bit more info. Just real quick, we're of course have it in the show notes, but where can people go to find both the GeoMob and the intercaching?
Intercaching is at intercaching.com. That's where you go to create or play. The GeoMob is actually on my, and I'm going to have to look it up. That's on one of my personal servers.
Chilihead.us
/ GeoMob or Mob, I can't
GeoMob.
remember. GeoMob.
I'll
I'll
have to
probably
look
move that at some point, but right now it's just sitting there because it's a free site I have and didn't want it. What's that?
/mob.
Okay. It'll probably move at some point, but I'll leave a link there if I do move it.
All right. Well, thanks again. And Chris, I think it's about time now for that question.
You know, we like giving things away. So we have a 365-day membership. That's a year, folks. I did that math in my head. From Project-GC going out to someone next week. But we're going to make this a little more challenging. Since it's a randomized show, we want your topics, which could be an interesting article, a question, a tip, whatever you want to send in. Email it to GeoGearHeads@cachemaniacs.com with the subject, Question 202. In the body, include your geocaching.com screen name and the link to a story you found interesting and want us to talk about. It could be your tip or trick to be shared, or a question you'd like us to consider on the show. If you have that to us by November 11th, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll be entered into that drawing for a 365-day membership to Project GC. Again, that title is Question 202, and it needs to be addressed to GeoGearHeads@cachemaniacs.com. Good luck in that drawing, and if you join us live, you'll have a second chance at a membership.
Of course, because we always have something for the live viewers in those randomized shows. So make sure to join us at 9:10 p.m. Eastern. That's 6:10 p.m. Pacific, November 12th for GeoGearHeads 202, our 39th randomized show. And we should have Corey Stevens and Michael Miller on that show, so that should be a fun one. Then the following week, November 19th, we're going to have a couple of our buddies on to talk about smartphone caching. That's our third time, but this one is going to focus on the apps. So we've taken a number of apps on Android and iOS. We're going to take a look at them and tell you our thoughts on each of those. Then on the 26th, the Bear returns for Road Caching 8. December 3rd, I think a lot of people are going to get excited because Rob of Munzie is going to return to talk about Munsie's non-Munsies. So no Munsies, just the other things that happen around Munzie. Then December 10th, it's time for Randomize XL, and I think everyone is going to know the guest for that one, but I'm not going to tell you just yet.
Daryl, I think Randomize XL should go twice as long.
It may indeed do that. We don't know. But, of course, there's always the patron shows after.
That's true. And what we'd like you to do is to check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming, so please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2015 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.